Narrating, thoughtful. I was a new student at Southern Lehigh High School in Pennsylvania. Going into my junior year of high school, not knowing anyone, was really rough. Everyone obviously had their friend groups sorted out by then. Pause, slightly anxious. But the worst part was lunchtime. Tense, a little bitter. My school wouldn't let juniors leave for lunch. Only seniors. Hesitant. So, I had to eat in the cafeteria. I was dreading it. I knew I'd have no one to sit with. And I didn't want to force myself into some random table. Builds tension. When lunch finally came, I walked into the cafeteria, tray in my hands, looking around for a place to sit. Every single table was taken. I didn't even have the option to sit alone. Soft relief. But there was one table, way in the corner. Only 2 kids sitting there. Hopeful tone. That was the least intimidating spot. So I walked over and asked, "Mind if I sit here?" Slight pause, mimicking. They looked at each other. Then one of them said, "Yeah." Curious tone. When I sat down, I noticed they were identical twins. They looked part Hispanic, but they didn't have any accents. They honestly seemed all right. They introduced themselves, Antonio and Bruno. We talked a bit. Slightly surprised. They even invited me to hang out after school. Shrug. And honestly, I figured, why not? Had to start somewhere. I got their numbers. After school, I went home and dropped off all my stuff. Phone buzz. Shortly after, I got a text from Bruno. He said he and his brother were planning to hang out. Told me to meet them around 9 p.m. at the cemetery near my house. Yeah, a cemetery. Small nervous chuckle. Said there was a cool hangout spot near there. Plus, first day of school had been a Friday, so we had the next day off. I had nothing else going on. So I said, "Yeah, I'm down." When the time came, Bruno texted again. "You still coming?" I replied, "Yeah, leaving in a few." We confirmed, meeting by the road next to the cemetery. He said, "Yeah." Low tense. So I started walking. In the dark. To a cemetery. Uneasy. The longer I walked, the more I started thinking. About the move. Being the new kid in high school. And the fact that I was literally walking to a cemetery. At night. To meet 2 kids I'd just met that day. But anyway, I reached the little road next to the cemetery. Texted Bruno, "Where you guys at?" Phone buzz. He replied fast. "We're in the woods. By a small lake. Gotta show you something." Then he sent me his location. Building tension. So I made my way into the woods. Pushing branches out of the way. Using my tiny phone flashlight as my only light. I started calling their names. Bruno? Antonio. I felt like I was close. At least, according to the pin he dropped. Quiet, suspenseful. Then I heard something. Footsteps. I stopped. Definitely, footsteps. Approaching me. Slow /low. Sharp tone. I called out. "You better not be trying to scare me." Pause, silence. No answer. That's when I decided. This was stupid. I turned around. Started walking back toward the road. But those footsteps. They changed. From slow and quiet. To fast. Before I could even react. Someone's nails dug into my neck. I couldn't breathe. They were choking me. Then I heard a familiar voice yell. "Grab him. Grab him." Gasping, scared. I somehow broke free. Got out of the chokehold. And just sprinted toward the road. I know they followed me. Just send the next part when you're ready, and I'll do the same treatment for it. Here's your full continuation rewritten with emotion, natural pacing, and voice acting cues, just like the first part, but without headings or bullet points, keeping the style consistent and immersive for AI narration or voiceover. Breathing heavy, running, until the tree line by the road. I was faster than them, and I could run for miles. And that's exactly what I did. I ran straight home. I told my parents everything. They thought about calling the cops, but I said maybe we should get photos of the nail marks on my neck first, and report it to the school the next day. That's what we did. And with the texts I had from Bruno, I was able to get both of those students expelled. My parents told me to block their numbers. I didn't argue. They asked if the twins knew where we lived. I just said, "Not as far as I know." So anyway, one night, about a week later, I woke up. My room felt really cold. I heard wind blowing into the room. I looked toward the window /, and it was slid completely open. I wondered, did my mom open it? But that didn't make any sense. It was like 50 degrees outside. Who would do that? I got up, walked over to the window, looked down. Just below my bedroom window, there's a ledge, part of the house's exterior that juts outward a few feet. My dad always told me, if there's ever a fire, You jump onto that ledge. I shut the window. Then I walked to my parents' bedroom. Knocked gently. Opened the door. My mom stirred and asked groggily, "What's wrong?" I asked her, "Did you open my window?" She sat up, confused. "No, why?" I told her louder this time. My window was opened, all the way, by someone. She looked alarmed. Started shaking my dad to wake him up. Told him to check my room. But when he sat up, he just groaned and said, "Grow up. Go back to bed." I didn't argue. But as I walked back down the hall, something felt off. My bedroom door. It wasn't fully open like I'd left it. It was half shut. I stopped. My heart started pounding. I pushed it open just a crack. Just enough to peek through. And there was someone standing behind my door. Panic rises. I screamed. Like a little kid. Screamed so loud. I swear, it echoed down the street. Suddenly, my door slammed shut. My dad burst from his room. Rushed over to me as I shouted, "There's someone in my room." He barged inside, flipped the light on. And just as he did, we both saw a leg. A person jumping out my window. My dad ran over, looked out, then sprinted down the stairs and out the front door. He came back minutes later, out of breath, face pale. He didn't see anyone, but I was shaking, heart racing. I swore it had to be those twins, the ones I got expelled. My dad called the police. They came. I told them everything, all the way back to the woods. My dad backed me up, but without proof of who actually came in. They said there wasn't anything they could do. They told us to lock all doors and windows. Maybe think about installing cameras. But deep down I knew it was them, or one of them. After that night, I spent a couple months sleeping in fear. But nothing ever happened again. No sounds. No open windows. No footsteps. Looking back now, I don't know what I was thinking. Going into the woods at night, with two strangers I had just met. I should have known from the cafeteria. They looked like trouble. I should have stayed away. Pause. Shift in tone. New story begins. Freshman year of high school. 2007 / Gym class. Last period of the day. We had a substitute teacher. One of the stormiest days of the year. The sub was older, not like ancient, but definitely gray. Maybe mid-50s. Pushing 60. He took attendance. And when he passed me, he did a double take. I waited. Listened for the locker room door to shut. Once it did, I quickly started changing. But then, the lights went out. Cut to black. Ready for your next part whenever you are. Let me know if you want a pause, background music notes, or voice tone for different characters too. Here is your continued script, rewritten with natural emotional pacing, pronunciation cues, and a human voiceover tone, without changing your story or using headings or bullet points. Tense, breath shallow. I shoved my locker shut in the dark, threw my backpack on, and started walking to the back exit of the locker room, the one that led outside. I had this deep fear that the sub would be waiting for me right by the door. I was getting serious, predatory vibes from him. When I got to the end of the aisle of lockers, I was standing at an intersection between two rows. To reach the exit, I had to turn left. But I couldn't help it. I had to look right first, just to make sure it was clear. There was a bit of light seeping in, just a sliver from a single rectangular window, high under the ceiling. But it was enough. Enough for me to see him, peeking around the lockers, staring straight at me. Just stared. It made me uncomfortable. Not to toot my own horn, but people always said I looked older for a freshman. I guess I did. Maybe too good. Anyway, the sub told us to get into our volleyball teams. And then he disappeared. Into the hallway near the locker rooms. He didn't come back. 40 minutes went by. Period was over. Time to change and head home. I went into the locker room. But for some reason, my locker wouldn't open. I kept trying my usual combo. Over and over and over. Nothing. Eventually, I went to find the sub. Told him I needed to look up my combination. He said, "Give me a few minutes." So I waited outside the office. Eventually, he came back with a book already flipped open to a page. He walked with me into the girls' locker room. I didn't expect that. The room was basically empty by then, except for one girl, just finishing getting dressed. He walked up to my locker, tried the combo written down on the paper. Didn't work. Tried again. Still nothing. Each time it failed, he'd look at me and laugh. I laughed too, awkwardly, just trying to be polite. But then, it got weird. He put his hand on my shoulder, smiling, said, "We'll figure this out." He tried again, but his hand stayed there. And then, it started sliding. From my shoulder. Slowly. to my lower back. I stepped away, fast, grabbed my bag and said, "It's okay, I'm late for my bus." Just then, he tried the combo one last time, and the locker popped open. He smiled and walked away. That's when I ran for the door. He came after me. Wait, wait, it's not what it looks like. But I didn't stop. I sprinted out into the rain, off the campus, all the way home, soaking wet, heart pounding, and just thinking. By the time I reached my front door, it hit me. He most likely changed my locker combination, just to get me alone, in the locker room. And as for whatever he was planning when he cut the lights, I don't even want to imagine. I was too emotionally shaken, and honestly, too embarrassed to tell anyone, not even my parents, not my friends. It was something I kept to myself all these years. Because truthfully, I've never felt comfortable telling people. Back in high school, I was in the band, and at our school, it was basically either that, or orchestra, or chorus. So I chose band. Our band teacher, Mr. Nicholson, he had this grading system where, as long as you showed up to class and attended one lesson per week, you'd get an A. Sadly, near the end of the quarter, I had missed 2 lessons. Because of that, I had a B. I went up to him after class to ask if I could make them up. He seemed kind of reluctant, but eventually he said yeah. He'd let me come during lunch to practice in one of the downstairs storage rooms. That way, I could get credit. Honestly, I was fine with that. I probably wasn't going to practice anyway. Just play games on my phone for 20 minutes. The next day, I came in during lunch, grabbed my saxophone, headed down the stairs outside the music room, into the basement hallway for the music department. It was always a little creepy down there. Empty, dim. Almost no one went there except for the music teachers. The lights were awful. I had only been down there a couple times before. But that day, I walked through the hallway. Both sides were lined with doors to these small rooms, maybe 7 feet by 7 feet. Each one was packed with random stuff. Chairs, music stands, spare instruments, even old Christmas decorations. I stepped into one of them, shut the door behind me, just in case Mr. Nicholson came down to check. I set up my music stand. But really? I sat down and pulled out my phone. Then darkness. Pitch black. Except for the glow of my phone screen. I looked over at the light switch. Just instinctively tried flicking it up and down a few times. Nothing. I stood up, stumbled a bit, opened the door, and found more darkness. The hallway outside was just as dark. I held my phone out in front of me, trying to light my way. It barely helped. I think I had an old iPhone 3 or something. No flashlight on it. But the glow from the screen was just enough. Just enough to see. A door near the end of the hallway, slowly opening. And then I heard it. Something being dragged. A big plastic container, or bin, scraping across the floor. Then, manic breathing, followed by these strange, animal-like grunts. I stood frozen, watching, as someone pushed a big plastic container out of the room, into the hallway. I didn't know what I was seeing, but I turned off my phone screen, slid back into the room I'd come from, and shut the door, silently. I don't know what I was thinking, why I didn't run, but the sounds I heard, and the fact that the lights had gone out just before it all started. It made me feel like I needed to hide. Whoever it was, they were blocking the stairs. There was no way out. And of course, no reception down there. All I felt safe doing was sitting in the dark and hoping the lights would come back on. But they didn't. Eventually, I decided I had to try and leave. I quietly opened the door, holding my phone out again for a little bit of light. I stepped into the hallway, inched closer to the stairs. Then I heard something. I froze, panicked, and crept into the nearest open room. Shut the door. I still didn't know what I was hiding from. Could it have been a janitor? Or a staff member? Maybe. But it didn't feel like that. Because they only showed up after the lights went out. I stood in that room, in total darkness, listening, waiting. And you know how sometimes, even if you don't hear a sound, you can feel someone else is in the room with you? Let me know when you're ready for the next continuation. I'll keep the style, emotion, and pacing consistent across all parts. Want me to add breath cues or background sound direction too? Here is your final part, fully rewritten in the same immersive, emotional, and realistic human voiceover-ready style, with smooth pacing, emotion, and natural flow, and no changes to your story. Tense, whispering. Suddenly, that feeling, that gut punch of dread, hit me like a wave. I stood frozen in that pitch-black room. With a trembling hand, I reached into my pocket and pressed the home button on my phone. The screen lit up for half a second. That's all I needed. Low, shaken. There was someone, standing in the corner of that tiny storage room, just 3 feet away from me. I pretended I didn't see anything, didn't react, but it was too late. It was what I heard next, breaking the silence. A hand. It patted my shoulder. Once, twice. Then it started squeezing. I dove for the doorknob, my fingers fumbling, slipping, finally finding it, pulling it open. The man inside tried slamming it shut, but I was already out. I bolted up the stairs, burst through the door to the main floor of the music hall. The lights were still on there. I ran straight to Mr. Nicholson, completely out of breath. He looked at me, confused, and I just shouted, "There's someone down there." He called security. They went down to check the basement. When they came back, they said they didn't find anyone. Just a bunch of music equipment moved around. Mr. Nicholson canceled his flute lesson. I sat in that room with him and 5 other flute players, telling the whole story from the top. But with no cameras in the music hall, there was no proof. Whoever it was, they had cut the power to the basement. Maybe to steal equipment. Maybe for something worse. The next day, I got called to the dean's office to officially give my statement. And that was that. Beat. Transition to new story. Voice playful but suspenseful. One night, my friends and I came up with what we thought was a genius plan. We were going to sneak into the high school basement. There was this one window, broken, never fixed. It led right inside. But to get to it, you had to hop a short metal gate surrounding the staircase outside. It wasn't much of a barrier, but something about climbing over it made it feel like we were doing something seriously illegal. We made sure there weren't any security cars nearby, hopped the gate, and started crawling through the window. Getting in wasn't easy. We had to boost each other up and then squeeze through this absurdly tight opening. But once we were in, we were in. We split up, each of us wandering different corners of the basement. One thing was clear. The basement was a total mess. Barely lit. One tiny white light glowed from a far corner. And weirdly enough, the red exit signs gave off more light than you'd think. I was walking through the junk when I saw one of my friends ahead of me. He whispered, "Let's go upstairs." So I followed him. We climbed the stairs together. He pushed open the door that led to the main hallway. Everything was pitch black. I always thought there were lights left on overnight. But not that night. Not a single one. All I could see were red, glowing exit signs in the distance. I followed him down the hallway, and I remember whispering, "Dude, this is really creepy." He mumbled something back, but something about it felt off. I started thinking, what if someone else was in here, besides us? Still following my friend, he walked into the bathroom, entered one of the stalls. I stood by the sinks and whispered, "Hurry up." I waited and waited. Then my phone rang. It was Chris. He sounded annoyed. "Dude, where the hell did you go?" I said, "I'm upstairs, with Roland or Brandon, I think." There was a pause. Chris said, "What are you talking about?" "They're right here with me." Then I heard both their voices in the background. "Yeah, what's up?" I just froze. My voice cracked. I. Then I heard it. Laughter. From the stall. But it wasn't my friend's laugh. It was different. Off. I looked up slowly. And there, someone was peeking over the top of the stall. Just staring at me. Eyes wide. Standing on the toilet. I screamed into the phone. Asterisk, holy. Asterisk. Over and over. I ran. Out of the bathroom. My heart was going crazy. I didn't even know where I was going. I just ran. Tried to get back to the basement. Everything looked different in the dark. But somehow I found it. I ran down the stairs, yelling, "Go, go." And they heard me. One by one, we climbed back onto a plastic bin, up onto the window ledge, and crawled out. I was the first one out, terrified that whatever was in the bathroom was now following me. When everyone was finally outside, I told them everything. Out of breath, laughing from adrenaline now that I felt safe. We were loud. Too loud. We stopped talking. Looked around. That's when we saw it. In one of the basement windows. Someone. Standing there. Hands pressed against the glass. Only half their face visible. I said, "That's got to be him." Roland didn't waste time. "Let's get the hell out of here." We ran. Didn't stop until we were completely off school grounds. Afterward, we came up with so many possible explanations. Maybe it was a janitor. Maybe just a squatter. Maybe someone messing with us. But none of it really made sense. One thing we all agreed on. We were never doing something like that again. Ever.